When some game publishers exit the Famicom, it's a bittersweet moment. They've created so many great things, but it's time to move on. And then we have Pony Canyon. With 27 releases under their belt, they're the largest publisher to exit the Famicom so far. The 9th largest publisher for the Famicom by my count, and among the 27 games that they published for the system are some of the worst things for the Famicom. They tried to specialize in computer ports, and a few of those went to the level of acceptable. But for the most part, I'm not shedding any tears to see Pony Canyon go. Especially when they're taking a game like Dragons of Flame with them. Dragons of Flame is the sequel to Heroes of the Lance, and as bad as Heroes of the Lance was, Dragons of Flame is worse. In fact, Dragons of Flame is my pick for the single worst Dungeons & Dragons video or computer game. And yes, I'm well aware that Pool of Radiance Ruins of Myth Draenor would delete your hard drive if you installed it into a root directory. I stand by what I said. Like Heroes of the Lance before it, Dragons of Flame is loosely based on one of the original Dragonlance campaign modules. DL2, of course. Dragonlance was one of the first alternate settings that Dungeons & Dragons tried out that really took off. Its fantasy world has been abandoned by the gods, but the first module was about bringing back a little bit of that power. But now that that's occurred, the armies of the evil dragons are moving across the land, conquering everything in their path. And that's where Dragons of Flame starts. They've seized control over a key fortress and taken townspeople from the surrounding area as slaves. And your goal as the Heroes of the Lance, the main characters from the novel series that was based on all of this, is to put an end to their schemes. Now I'll give Pony Canyon this. The Famicom version of Dragons of Flame is much better than the computer versions. Now you're going to watch this video and go, how could that be? This game's awful. What happened is Pony Canyon simplified the game quite a bit. I would say they were dumbing it down, but the game is pretty dumb to begin with. What they've done is take it from an unplayable mess to something that can be completed. In fact, as I was approaching the end of my recording time, I realized I was about to beat the game. So I kept playing for a little while longer, and I beat it in 1 hour and 5 minutes. Now in fairness, I had a map. I wasn't going to wander around in circles for an hour. I also happened to know the general outline of the game from trying to beat the computer version. So I had some advantages here, but it's still a very short, very shallow game. When you start the game, you're wandering in the wilderness near the fortress. And as you explore, monsters will pop up, and touching one of those will send you into side view combat. This is actually where 90% of the game takes place. And the wilderness combats consist of 2, and always 2 monsters. You're in control of whichever party member is in the upper left-hand slot, and unlike in Heroes of the Lance, damage doesn't spill over to other people on the front line. A jumps and B swings your weapon. You can't attack in the air, you can't use ranged attacks like this, just swing and move. And the way that combat will wind up working out is you'll take a couple swings, then you'll see that the enemy starts an animation and you'll back away, and then you'll close in to attack again, and repeat until it's done. Also, while you're wandering the wilderness, you'll see these purple guys. They'll talk to you, and on very rare occasions, some of them might give you something. While exploring the wilderness, the only squares you can walk on are the grass, so you'll mainly be trying to find your way through mazes. After you make your way to the south, you'll find the fortress, and talking to the guy who's hanging around out front of it will lead you to a secret passage. He'll also refill your health and magic points, because this game doesn't use D&D style spells. The path to the secret passage is a second wilderness map, but it's a much smaller one. And once you enter the cave, you're locked in, and then you're stuck in this side-scrolling view for the rest of the game. Yeah, all of that wilderness stuff was just the first 10 minutes, and the rest of the game is nothing like it. The dungeon view plays identically to the combats in the overworld, but now you can hit up to enter doors, and the passages will be interconnected. At any time, you can hit start to bring up a menu, and this is where you manage your party, cast spells, and use items. It's also where you go to save the game, and there are 3 battery save slots in Dragons of Flame. From this menu, you can swap the positions of characters in the party, Whoever's in the upper left will be the one who's fighting, so that's the most important thing to consider. But you also have to have the mage and the cleric in the top row to use their abilities. Two of your characters are a bit short, and so some enemy attacks go right over their heads. But they're not the best fighters, so you probably don't want to use them regularly. Spells are cast from the pause menu. You just select if you're going to do magic user or priest spells, and then pick what you want from the menu. The bar is how many magic points they have, and there's a couple of different points where you can recover those during the game. Use is where you go to if you want to change out your equipment, drink a potion, read a scroll, or use a ranged attack. You have to go back to this menu and use the ammunition every single time you want to use a ranged attack. As far as I can tell, the ammunition's unlimited. You'll find lots of ammunition to pick up wandering the maze, but I never ran out of it in a single slot. Even when I was intentionally burning through it, trying to kill a monster very, very, very slowly. All of the ranged attacks are pretty useless. Then you have your inventory handling options, which are to drop items or to hand them between characters. You pick up items that you find in the dungeon by just walking on top of them and pressing down. The only dungeon in the game has 2 floors to it, and it's just a series of interconnected passages. Passages with monsters will only ever have 2 monsters in them, and all of the traps that you'll encounter are things that fall from the ceiling or holes in the floor. It's not the most complicated of dungeons. If a room is clear of monsters, then you can choose to rest from your pause menu, and that will recover a bit of health. There's a bit of a delay before you can choose to rest again, but it's by far the most efficient way to keep your guys topped off. At the end of the second floor, you'll encounter the first boss, this dragon who happens to be extremely vulnerable to magic missile. Cast 3 magic missiles at it, and it dies. Honestly, it's kind of pathetic. Immediately past the dragon, you'll encounter the final boss, who will shoot magical bolts at you. Unless, of course, you cast Dispel Magic, in which case you completely neuter them. And that is how you beat Dragons of Flame. This is the final Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game on the Famicom, since somehow Japan avoided getting Dragon Strike. But people outside of Japan didn't get Dragons of Flame, so who can say who had it worse? These days, Dragons of Flame for the Famicom is mainly remembered in Japan for being the other one when it comes to AD&D games on the system. Though among the few people I found who played it, they seemed to enjoy it. I don't know why, but they did. Obviously, I think this one's pretty bad. Despite giving you a big dungeon and a wide-open wilderness, they're effectively empty, rendering exploration meaningless. Your characters don't level up, so running from enemies is always the preferred option. And it's not like combat is fun to do anyways. The best thing I can say about this game is that you can beat it really fast, and then hopefully go play something better.